Hello everyone, my name is Apple Guy, and welcome back to another bonus video here for Let's Play The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker HD. This is the third bonus video and my planned final bonus video. As always though, I can come back and make bonus videos for series anytime I want. For example, I recently, as in 2022, maybe it was late 2021, but anyway, I uploaded 2 Ocarina of Time videos on the Lost Beta from Space World, and I put those in the playlist, so they're technically 2 bonus videos. Similarly, this bonus video will also be about content that didn't make it into the final game. This is going to be cut content and unused content. This should be a fairly interesting video. I did a decent amount of research, and I'm pretty excited. So before I get into the content, I want to explain how the video is going to work. There's going to be some gameplay going on in the background. It's going to be something from Wind Waker. I'm not sure what it's going to be. But I've consulted 3 different sources in order to make this video happen. I looked at my own copy of Hyrule Historia, which is a compendium of concept art, and so there will be some mentions of that. I also conducted some research on the ZeldaWiki, and on a website known as the Cutting Room Floor. There will be a full bibliography in the description, so you can go to specifically whatever you would like to see. Attribution is given in the description. I'm very thankful for the volunteers of the Cutting Room Floor and ZeldaWiki for doing the work that they did. But let's go ahead and jump right into the cut content first off. This is content that did not make it into the final game or is not in the final game in an accessible way. The first thing is concept art here. We see that there is a sketch with the 5 main characters of the game, as well as a random fairy. This is potentially a hint that there was originally going to be a fairy companion, similar to Navi or Atoll. From left to right, we see Medley, Makar, Link, Tetra, and Errol. And then above Link's left shoulder, there is a fairy. It's possible that it is just a fairy, but it is appearing alongside the main cast, which makes me think that it could possibly be a fairy friend. Next piece of concept art we have to look at is an unnamed race from the game. There are these furball kind of guys. It says they're going to get angry and bounce around, and that they have children hidden in their fur. This is quite an interesting thing to look at. They give me foresty sort of vibes, and so I would assume that these evolve to eventually become the Koroks. It also fits with their sort of small nature and them bouncing around. I feel like the Koroks would bounce around a little bit. I don't know, something about fur makes me think foresty. They also kind of look like leaves, I guess. You can see how the Koroks could get a leaf face out of the beard design there. Here we have some unused monsters from the game. It is very clear to see that the 2 on the lower left did become bokoblins, and the one at the top could potentially be a moblin. The sheer size of the moblin and also how it's using its weapon makes it sort of appear like it might have been a boss. But it does have the general moblin aesthetic, especially with the club. And of course there's a flying enemy, which I'm not sure what that could have been. There aren't really many flying enemies. Perhaps it was some form of a Kargarok before the Kargaroks took a final form. There's a Poe in the bottom right, presumably, and then something scratching its back. Very interesting, but not sure what it could be. Here we have 2 cut islands from the game. There is Stovepipe Island and GC Island. It says Island Concept Sketches. The motif for GC Island is the Nintendo GameCube. Neither of these islands appear in the game. That's true, although slightly not true. Stovepipe Island definitely reformed itself into Dragon Roost. It's very obvious by the whole volcano theme. I think maybe Stovepipe Island just had a name originally, and then they changed it to Dragon Roost Cavern once the game took a final shape. GameCube Island, however, did not make any appearance in the game, but it did get a spiritual successor in Phantom Hourglass with DS Island, which is an island in the shape of the Nintendo DS, which is the system that game was on. Finally, we have fishing and the Fisherman. There is a note here that says you could use a fishing hook as a potential warp item. This leads me to believe there was planned below the sea content. If you were needing to travel below and above the sea in a quick method using an item, generally you'd have to be down there for a reason. I feel like that reason could be more exploration underneath the ocean. Perhaps the dungeons were intended to be underneath the ocean, similar to how they are in Skyward Sword, where you do a lot of the human interaction above the surface, and then all the monsters and whatnot live below the surface. I don't think that idea got very far into the making though, because we won't see much evidence of below the sea content when we delve into the files of the game. Moving over to ZeldaWiki and the cut content from there, we will see the Space World 2001 trailer for the game, where Link is sneaking and tiptoeing around. He's also peeking around corners, doing some stealth. This most definitely evolved into the Siddle function, or it's potentially a temporary action for the Forsaken Fortress. As we know, in the game you lose your sword in the Forsaken Fortress, and you are required to sneak around. It's possible that in that case the B button would have been replaced with some sort of a sneak function, just while you were missing your sword. There's an item in the files of the game that does not make an appearance in the final game, known as the Water Boots. When hacked in, if you use it, it shows the Iron Boot animation, and I'm not really sure what this was for. It's probably a testing item. I doubt it was used for walking on water or sinking below the water. However, that concept does remind me of the Tingle Tuner's ability to walk on air, so maybe you were going to be able to do some sort of walking on water, but that doesn't make too much sense for the lore of the game. In a game where you're pretty much always in a boat, and the boat is a main character, why would you want to not use the boat? Doesn't make too much sense. Speaking of the boat, there were two sails that were cut from the original game, the Zora and Tingle Sails. They were cut most likely due to the GameCube's technical limitations. There's a quote from an MTV interview of all things with Eiji Aonuma where he says, "If I had one thing in particular I wanted to improve in the original, when I was developing the original, it has to be improving the boat speed, because limitations with the hardware." What that implies to me is that because of the technical limitations, the boat was not able to move any faster, and even though they wanted to implement that, it was just not possible. That leads me to believe that the Zora sail would have been faster sailing. It makes sense to me because the Zoras were a water-bound race, and they obviously move very speedily through the water. The Tingle Sail is a little more confusing to me. I think it could have potentially been a Tingle Tuner item, which would have gotten even faster sailing, but that's just a guess of mine. There's a lot of talk about a scrapped water-based dungeon, a third dungeon, as well as a Sage Arc. There is no citation on ZeldaWiki, but this is presented as a plausible cut piece of content. Another piece that sort of ties into this is people theorize that Errol was the third sage, mostly because she was the most important quote-unquote unused character. On Dragon Roost Cavern, we had Medley, and Medley became a sage. On Forest Haven, we had Makar. Makar became a sage. And during the Forsaken Fortress, our goal for the entire first half of the game was to save Errol, and then she just sort of disappears with the pirates. It would have been very thematic to chase down the pirates and say, "We need Errol," and then have her be the third sage. I guess with that logic, it could have also been Grandma, but Grandma kind of gets written out of the story real fast. Also, she gets sick, and you don't technically have to heal her, but I guess that's not very important. Continuing on now, I want to mention that Link has a fully animated swim. You just never see it because the water is opaque, but if you were to hack the game and remove the water, make it very transparent, you can see that Link actually does have a swimming animation, which I think is pretty interesting. They went through all that effort to design it, and then you just never ever see it. There's also an animation for Jaboon resurfacing from underneath the water. It is most likely intended that this would be used for Jaboon coming back up out of the water after a cutscene. For example, if you were to leave the hall where Jaboon is in the back of Outset Island and return, he'll just be gone. It's potentially possible you could have spoken with him again, however, because he only speaks in the language of the gods, it would have been pretty irrelevant unless you're in the second quest, but that also could tie into there being a third dungeon. Maybe he played a bigger role. One of the discoveries I found very interesting was a map known as H_test, also known as the Porcine Cathedral. This is either a test map that has some pigs on it, and that's why it was called the Porcine Cathedral, or it's an early version of Ganon's Tower. It's theorized that H in H_test means Hyrule Test, and Porcine leads me to believe it could have meant Ganon's pig form, which makes an appearance in many games such as the Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. In Twilight Princess, you actually fight Ganon's pig form in a church, which is like a cathedral, so it's possible you could have had an extra stage of the Ganon fight there. That's just my theory, however. It is, at the end of the day, just a map that's got some pigs in the corner of it, so perhaps that's why it was called the Porcine Cathedral. But I like my idea better. It leads me to think we could have seen another stage of Ganon. Originally, when you picked up an enemy's weapon, such as a Bokoblin club, you would have the icon show up over your B button. It would cover the icon of your normal sword, and this reminds me of Majora's Mask's instruments, where instead of showing the guitar for Zora Link, the normal ocarina for human Link, the drums for Goron Link, etc., It's just easier to have one icon do all of it, and in this case, it's even weirder because you use the A button to swing, not the B button, which means the sword icon would have covered the A button. I think what they went with in the normal game is the best option. There's an image in the game's files known as the Bespeckled Head. It's very creepy. I'm almost certain this was a placeholder or test texture. However, looking at it makes me think it could also be a Tingle thing. I feel like that's something you could see in Tingle's house. Like he'd stick that as a painting and call it art. There's a nameplate for an island known as Fairy Atoll. That island does not appear in the game. In fact, no island named Atoll appears. It's most likely a renamed island. My main theory is Mother and Child Isle, because that is the island that has the large fairy queen. However, it's also possible that it could have been any of the standard fairy fountain islands. Either way, Fairy Atoll does not make an appearance in the game, but in the files you can see a plate for it. And to end things off here, we have two different pieces of audio. First, we have the E3 title theme, which is a far more epic version of the game's main theme, used for the E3 2002 title reveal. I'll let it play out here, and you can tell me if you like this one or the final one more in the comment section. And last but not least, we have two different files for Jaboon's audio. Jaboon's audio doesn't make an appearance in the game, but also sort of does. I'll explain that in one moment. The first soundbite we have is a friendly Jaboon audio noise, most likely would have been associated with him resurfacing, or potentially him laughing in a cutscene. Near the end, you can sort of hear a laugh. I'll let you listen to that now. And last but certainly not least, we have Jaboon's, what I call, nightmare audio. This is Jaboon screaming? In pain? Question mark? It's very hard to tell, large whale noises, but it's kind of a disturbing noise. And it's also technically not cut, because it is used when you are leaving the ghost ship. After you claim the Triforce chart there, this audio track is sped up and used as a sound of the ghosts kicking you out. It just was never used in its original form. People theorize that this could be Jaboon in pain. In the original game, Ganon does attempt to kill Jaboon, however he only ends up destroying the island instead. Jaboon is able to escape. Maybe in the original, Jaboon does not escape, however, and you find him with this terrible noise. Doesn't really relate to having a happy, alive Jaboon as the first bit of uncut audio, but judge it for yourself. I'll play it right now. And with that, we have come to the end of all the unused or cut content I wanted to discuss here. There's obviously a plethora more, and I recommend if you're interested, you take a peek at the cutting room floor or ZeldaWiki. It is a great resource. I just included some of the things that I found to be particularly interesting. There was a lot of stuff that I looked at and I thought, okay, like yeah, there's test maps in the games file, and there's unused textures, and there's like, hey, if you see this text, call a developer, something's wrong. But that was never intended to be used anyway. Some of these things are super unique and definitely point to a game we did not get, and that is something that I find to be very interesting. If you guys want to learn more about the beta of this game, I recommend going to a channel such as Beta64. They tend to have really great videos on the past of games that we don't get to play. And if you're interested in unused content, I also recommend checking out my Ocarina of Time Space World videos, because I have two of those where I explore some unused content in the Ocarina of Time. That's going to be all for now, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please hit like and subscribe, and tell your friends about my channel if you think they would enjoy it. It means a lot to me when you get my videos around. This is most likely the final video of the Wind Waker HD, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this series, and I hope you guys stick around for the next Let's Play, which should be starting in about a week or two. It'll be very different from this one, but I hope you stick around regardless. Thank you so much for all the support, and I will catch you guys all back here next time. Until then, as always, take care.